Today is the first time we are heading to a location that is actually featured in an Assassin's Creed game. Now, I live in the northeastern portion of the United States, and so I haven't been able to do this for any of the games we've played thus far, but I'm skipping ahead to Assassin's Creed 3 for this video. And so for today's video, explore the historical significance and history of the Old North Bridge. Now let's first talk about the iterations of the bridge and why the one today is worthy of a visit. When we talk about the Old North Bridge, we must first jump back to the 1600s. The town of Concord had been naturally divided by the Concord River, with farmland on one side and the growing town center on the other. It remains unclear when exactly the first colonial structure arose on the site, but the first mention of the Old North Bridge comes from 1654. To meet the growing needs of the community, the residents built a wooden bridge for all kinds of travel. Unfortunately, the power of the current would not allow for a long-lasting structure, and so the bridge has gone through at least 8 recorded iterations in its lifetime. Spring floods have been especially troublesome, and it can generally be said that a replacement was needed every 20 to 30 years. Now, throughout the 1700s, the townsfolk were forced to repair and replace what is known as the Old North Bridge on several occasions, including a replanking in the 1740s, a repair in 1749, and a full replacement in 1760. And with the construction of that iteration, we have reached the version of the bridge that was host to the famous events of 1775. It is also the iteration you can see in Assassin's Creed 3. We'll touch on those events in a short while. Anyway, the historical structure only lasts another 13 years as a new bridge is built in 1788. So, a 28-year lifespan for the historical version of the bridge, and as you'll see, that is actually kind of long for something on this spot of the Concord. By the time 1793 rolls around, the town of Concord had changed much from its 1650s configuration, and a 40-year town frustration finally came to a head. A new location had been selected for a bridge across the Concord River, and the now 5-year-old North Bridge was disassembled and rebuilt several hundred yards downriver in the form of the Flint Bridge. Thus begins the nearly 100-year phase in which the North Bridge ceased to exist. That's right, from 1793 to 1874, Hunt's Bridge to the south and Flint's Bridge to the north are the only paths across the river for the people of Concord and those in the rapidly growing area. The decision led to the town shaping itself more and more around these two crossings. Eventually, private ownership would take over parts of where the Old North Bridge once stood, and it seemed as though Concord forgot about the bridge and the historical event that took place on it. It took until the centennial of the Battle of Lexington and Concord to inspire residents to rebuild and resurrect the landmark, but just for commemoration of the event rather than for traffic across the bridge. Like I said, the town had changed. Cousin of Ralph Waldo Emerson, William Ralph Emerson, was tasked with building the Centennial Commemorative Bridge, as it would eventually be known, and the structure was completed in time for the 100-year anniversary. Unfortunately, the strength of the river hadn't changed over this time period, and the CCB lasted all of 13 years as a flood washed it away in 1888. Fortunately, though, it would no longer fade from the public's mind, and another bridge would quickly follow. This reconstruction of the bridge would last all the way until 1908, before the town voted to completely replace it. To battle these floods and the strong current, the residents turned to concrete for a new bridge, which was created in 1909 to similar specifications of the iteration that was the host of the Battle of Concord. This version lasted all the way until 1955, when a hurricane damaged it beyond repair. Another one bites the dust for the Old North Bridge. The following year, 1956, is the year the current bridge was built, modeled after the 1760 version, but with improved design and materials. This is the bridge I was fortunate enough to walk on the other day and record. Now let's touch on why it is Concord cared to bring this bridge back to life and the events that made it so famous. To give a brief overview, the 1760s and early 1770s saw the colonists of the British Empire within New England grow progressively more discontent with colonial rule. As far as the North Bridge and the city of Concord are concerned, this took the form of local stockpiles that the British Army sought to destroy. We aren't going to get into the intricacies of the failure of diplomacy or various other events that heighten the conflict, but rather briefly touch on this event and how this bridge appears in Assassin's Creed 3. On April 19, 1775, British regulars are sent to the cities of Lexington and Concord on reports that revolutionaries are holding up there with caches of weapons and gunpowder. In response, residents known as Minutemen gather in those areas to discuss how to counter this move. To the north of Concord, a large force of these Minutemen come together just as regulars march into the center of Concord. The British regulars proceeded to divide in two to take the north and south bridges and search and seize any stockpiles they discovered. 7 companies were sent to the North Bridge, 4 of which marched across and searched a local farm. These 4 actually wouldn't participate in the coming action. Responding to the sight of smoke coming from the town center, which was actually the British burning some of the seized weapons, the over 400 Minutemen approached the remaining regulars at the bridge. These 96 British troops are ordered to retreat towards Concord Center over the bridge. Such is the scene in which history unfolds. It remains unclear which side fired first, but both sides then exchanged volleys of musket fire. The resulting conflict saw 2 militiamen killed with 9 British casualties. This began the infamous British retreat to Boston and was part of the larger battles of Lexington and Concord. The 4 companies that had originally went across the bridge returned unmolested after this engagement and also marched over the bridge and back into the center of town. On the British side, and as of 2023, there remains the Old Manse, a structure built in 1770 for Reverend William Emerson, as well as the Battle Monument, constructed in 1836, oddly enough a year when no bridge stood at this site, and the 1910 granite marker signifying the graves of those British soldiers who were killed at the battle. On the American side, there stands the Minuteman statue, a structure built by Daniel Chester French in 1875 and modeled after Isaac Davis, a man who fought in the battle and was the first American officer killed in the Revolution. Visitors will most likely park in a parking lot on the British side near the Old Manse. The walk down towards the bridge follows the British regulars as they sought to search a farm to the north of the city. For this video, I want to show 2 of the more noteworthy recreations of this bridge, one in the Assassin's Creed series and one in the far fictional future. Let's start with the former. Ubisoft did well recreating what the 1760 version of this bridge actually looked like. Unfortunately, there are limits when it comes to the historical documentation, and so there's no guarantee that this is an exact match, but from what we know, and based off of the modern day recreation, what Connor walks on is fairly accurate. What is a bit confusing here is the lack of the manse, a structure we know existed at this time, and would be on the town side of this footage. But let's just jump into the game. Jumping into Assassin's Creed 3, we are now walking over to where the Minuteman structure is today. This is where the Minutemen regulars were stationed during the battle, and today on our right would be a vast open field that sometimes freezes with water, and to our left would be basically woods. So looking back, you can see that obviously there's the bridge, and the greater area of Concord is over it and on the right. And we approach, once again, we are on the Minuteman side where the Minuteman statue is today. Now let's jump over to the other side. And we rejoin on the British side. This is where the British regulars were during the battle. And On this side, we currently have, in modern day, just a small little area where tour guides can present information on the bridge and the battle that was fought there. Climbing up and over. Right here on the right side would be where the grave of the British soldiers are. In the middle of the street would be the 1800s monument to the battle that was created obviously when the bridge wasn't there. And off to our right, where there's this general store and the center of town, that's actually where the Old Manse should be in this time period. I can't give you the exact time in the game, but right around the time that the battle took place was when the manse was created. So hard to say that any of these structures could be that, but it's a possibility. And in the far future, we see that the Old North Bridge has not fared very well. So on the Sanctuary Hills side, that would be where the Minutemen fought. Which is strange because the Minuteman statue would be on that side, but as you'll see, it is not. So in Fallout lore, apparently what happened to the Concord River in this area, obviously the bombs dropped and disaster happened. But before then, someone somehow decided that they should change the area completely. So instead of this wide open field and this Minuteman monument on that side, we have a cul-de-sac where obviously the main character for Fallout 4 lived before the Great War. The bridge has obviously seen better days, but it would be genuinely surprising to see it survive. This is 200 years in the future, even if there had been maintenance up to 2077. So yeah, we can see some of the damage here, missing planks, damaged planks. Yeah, but it would still be quite surprising to see it live, considering the fact that the Concord River has been quite a beast in its time with Europeans. As we walk across this bridge, once again from the Minuteman side all the way to the British side, we realize that they also made this a bridge that you drive over, which is genuinely surprising considering it has not held traffic since the 1700s, which is crazy. Even when they built the Centennial Bridge, that was not a vehicle, wagon bridge. That was strictly just for commemorating the event. And you can see the car on the ground and, again, the wear and tear. But here, now we're on the British side. Apparently, the United States gave up on the fact that there were British soldiers buried to our right. There is no plaque, no monument for them. Maybe they were moved and interned somewhere else. That could explain it, but if they didn't and they just paved over it, I find that very strange. But you can see the Minuteman statues on this side, so you'd think, all right, Joe, why do you say that this is the British side? Well, because this is the side that leads into Concord, which obviously is the side that the British were on historically. Looking back, once again, the bridge looks good, especially considering how old it is. And there's the Minuteman statue. So they must have removed the battle monument on this side. The Old Man's long gone, and they placed the Minuteman statue over here. Obviously, if you were going to make it a road, you'd have to move that anyway. And so they decided to put it on this side rather than Sanctuary Hills side. Not sure why that either, but it is missing its inscription and plaque and a little bit of the details. But, Bethesda did a pretty good job recreating what it actually looks like in our time period. And, you could always explain, hey, there was this wear and tear and they rebuilt it to look differently. So as you can see, Sanctuary Hills, even though the Concord River is now kind of formed into a pond, Sanctuary Hills is on that side. And when we look at the general area, Concord is down and to our right, which again lines up with the fact that in our world and even in their world, that would only be the British side. unless the entire town of Concord was moved, which seems really unlikely. And that will do it. Thank you all so much for watching. This has obviously been a unique video for this channel, but hopefully when we transition to Assassin's Creed 3, we can make it more, make more of our videos more like this, you know, where I can actually go and scout the location. Thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you liked the video, and subscribe for more Assassin's Creed content.